Just a little known fact, the Bible is actually 66 books in a trench coat pretending to hold the Guinness World Record for the best-selling book of all time. It's a lot less impressive when you divide by 66. The last 27 of which are called the New Testament and form the second part of the Christian Bible. Along with the books of the Hebrew Bible, these 27 New Testament books form the official canon text of most Protestant denominations. But what do these books say? Who wrote them? And why was it probably Paul? I think it's time to ask the slightly more recent than age-old question, what's up with the New Testament? If the Old Testament, or Hebrew Bible, tells a story of God's covenant with God's chosen people from creation to Abraham to multiple periods of imperial occupation, then the New Testament tells a story of that covenant realized in the life, teachings, and sacrifice of Jesus. The New Testament isn't organized chronologically how the books were written. Instead, the books are ordered to shape the story of Jesus' life, teaching, death, resurrection, and legacy. There are 4 main sections with different collections of books. The Gospels, which are 4 different accounts of Jesus' life from birth to resurrection. Well, sort of. John does not have a birth account, but does start Jesus' story at creation, and some of the Gospels do have post-resurrection stories. Anyway, these are the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The Acts of the Apostles, which chronicle the formation of the early church through actions taken by Jesus' disciples after his ascension. This section contains the book of Acts. The Epistles, which are a series of letters that outlined early Christian thinking, ethics, and theology for the new religion as it formed and spread out to new peoples. Epistle means letter, and each of these books were named after the people or person it was written to or by. These are Romans, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians, 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, Titus, Philemon, Hebrews, James, 1 Peter, 2 Peter, 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and Jude. 14 of these are attributed to Paul. Only 7 of these are undisputedly attributed to Paul. The rest were probably not, but maybe. This is why we cite our sources, people, and sign our letters. Paul and the other authors of the epistles were writing to local communities who were struggling with Christian thought and practice, capturing the development of the Christian movement. We still read these messages now to understand the first few generations of Christian thinkers who formed the basis for the church and to seek wisdom for today. Also, side note, yes, this is the same Paul whose name used to be Saul and had one of the world's most famous midlife crises. And finally, the strangest to our modern ears, the Book of Revelation. Revelation was written by John of Patmos and told in the style of an apocalypse, which readers of Jewish literature were very familiar with. The Hebrew Bible has many apocalypses, like in Daniel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and so forth. A biblical apocalypse is a type of narrative that frames history through the lens of symbolically dense visions interpreted by a prophet. These signs and symbols comment on past events in order to provide perspective on current affairs, or at least current when it was written. For instance, John wrote Revelation to 7 specific churches in Asia Minor and wove in symbols that his specific audience would recognize as references to Roman persecution. And John uses symbols from the Hebrew Bible apocalypses in order to compare the current Roman imperial occupation to the rise and fall of Babylon in the past. More than that, the book of Revelation foretells the kingdom of God winning out in the end, defeating empire, and reigning forever. Revelation uses the form of an apocalypse in order to draw patterns from history and impart both comfort and challenge to Christian churches as they formed. So, the New Testament follows one fairly focused narrative that follows Jesus' life, teachings, and lessons he brought to his followers. There were many books and writings from around the same period of time, around 50 CE to 120 CE, that were not included in the official recognized Christian canon, which was only established in the late 4th century by the councils of Hippo and Carthage, which I'm sorry to say were not fan conventions for hungry antiquities, but gatherings of Christian leaders to decide on official doctrine and a standardized list of which texts were considered inspired by God. The councils voted to recognize these 27 books, which were already being read and practiced by thousands of Christians. Along with the Hebrew Bible, this New Testament formed the canon holy texts for most Christians around the world for the last 16 centuries, because otherwise the fan fiction was getting out of hand.